Welcome back, everybody, to yet another episode of Foster Talks. And I'm hoping you are having a great start to a day with a nice garam chai in your hands, like I am doing today. And today, I'm not alone. I have a superstar Wonder Woman along with me. We have a guest today who is a writer, a poet, a performer, a journalist. There's a lot of titles to her. And I'm so keen to introduce you to Avnika Gupta. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Naghma.
Thank you so much for being here today. So Avnika, let me be very frank.
Yes.
I am having struggle trying to introduce you because there's so many things that you are doing. You have a lot of feathers on your crown, and I am really struggling to try and pick out what should I call you. Are you a journalist? Are you a poet? Are you a performer? Are you a writer? So why don't you tell me that? How would you introduce yourselves? What are you? What are all those things that's in and around you? The things that you do? Can you please tell me about yourself?
So Naghma, basically I identify as a writer.
Okay.
And I say it like this, identify as a writer, because I think that's very important to have clarity in terms of who you are and what you practice. So I think everything for me is connected with writing, because it's basically the creative process where you're letting yourself, explore your ideas, and everything else which you mentioned, which is, being a performance artist or performing poetry, is connected with that integral foundational process of writing for me. There are things that I would like to talk about, things which I care about, and the idea is basically to channel all of that in the most authentic way possible. And I think for me, because I love the medium of words, I relate to the world through words.
Yeah.
And that is the only way that I relate to it, in the strongest and most authentic way. Because I know there are people who relate to the world in numbers.
Yes.
There are people who relate to the world in the form of dance, in the form of music.
Yeah.
And for me, that is words.
Numbers is definitely not my cup of tea.
Neither
for
mine.
that matter. But then I was going through your profile. I've gone through multiple of your podcasts that you've done before, and I came across the statement that you live by, your purpose statement, as you call it, building one word at a time. Can you tell me about it a little bit more? What change are you trying to build to the world?
So I think, Naghma, for me, because I think 20s in your life is a time when you want to explore a lot.
Yeah.
And for me, because I end up having a lot of ambitions, a lot of ideas. So there was a point in my life that I was really, struggling to just put it down in a single line and say that, okay, this is what I'm about. And then I realized, that your relationships will change.
Yes.
The jobs you do will change. Like you said, even if you're a writer, you may work in a PR and advertising firm. You may write for a podcast. You may create something for, for films. But then I realized that in this ever-changing world, I have to come up with something that gives me direction when I'm feeling lost.
Okay.
So that's why I came up with building one word at a time, because at a single point in time, the only thing that is possible for a human being is to pay attention to that one moment in time. And that is the only real thing that exists.
Beautiful, yeah.
So that is why, it is not about how many people right now say, watch this podcast, or if I write something tomorrow, how many people read that. For me, it is about building one word at a time. And that is what will always be the mission for me. And I also added another line to it,
Okay.
which is I tell stories and make my own sunlight.
Beautiful. Nice.
Which again, comes from the fact that I tell stories is very clear, which is to do with being a storyteller across any format, whether it is digital, whether it is through, through a book, whether it is performing for people, any of that. But I think, and make my own sunlight, I tell stories and make my own sunlight, comes from the fact that any art that you're creating for the world is actually an inside out process.
That's a beautiful thought process. Yes, I agree to this actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Because it's
Interesting.
not about that how many buyers are there out there. It's about the fact that even if you sit in a coffee shop and
Yeah.
work under a dim light for days on end working on a story, that is what matters. And it's an inside out process, because people who connect with that, who want that level of integrity or that level of work, will automatically come to you. Like they say, the flower blooms,
Yes.
right? And the butterflies just come.
Beautiful. So, what is your process like when you're writing something? Do you like, what would your order be? Do you think from what you want to communicate, or do you start thinking from the perspective of what the audience would want to hear?
That's a very, very difficult and yet very important question.
Yes.
So I think primarily for me, it is not either or, because I've realized through multiple, channels of writing, whether it is poetry, fiction, or just writing an article, that somewhere you have to be like, okay, so like for example, for me, I care about women's issues a lot. I care about gender a lot. So I would be like, okay, I want to talk about gender, done, but then at the same time, what is it that's going on in the world at the moment? Is it the Me Too movement, or is it something that is specifically happened with a woman in a certain state, which right now people are talking about, and they would want to have a solid opinion on that?
Yes.
So I think somewhere it is a mix of the two, because you can't, I don't think, like for me, it doesn't work too well to shut out the world completely, because I think that would again can make you ignorant.
Yeah, I mean, you need relevance also on what you're writing.
Absolutely. And at the same time, if you care too much about what people want, then again you can lose your authenticity.
Very true. I mean, that's a very interesting take. So, this is me trying to understand. I'm asking out of curiosity. So, you're a storyteller, you write a lot of poems, but at the same time, you're also an activist, right? And you are a journalist, basically. So, how does these multiple hats as a writer even? Because writing, I understand you're working on your own fiction. I understand you are a poet. I understand you are a journalist. But these are the three different types of writing altogether. And these three requires different perspectives or different thought processes. So, do they cannibalize each other, or do they support you in different ways? How does it work for you?
So I think, like I said, it's basically once I identified my purpose statement, it became very clear to me that what is the kind of people that I want to surround myself with. So I love creative people. I love people who can think in terms of ideas. And that, once you know that what is your primary way of relating to the world, then I think, anything which you do in that domain kind of really, it just feeds into each other, and it becomes like a chain reaction, right? So like today we are doing this podcast. Maybe if, I meet a reader outside and we have a small chat, you never know, right? That person may have a story to tell, and maybe we decide that, okay, I was working on something similar, so let's write together.
That's nice, interesting.
Yeah, so I just see it like that process, and that's why the words I find very heavy sometimes. It's not about being a journalist or being a writer or any of that. Like for me, it's just the fact that there are things which I love doing, and it's as long as it's to do with words, I would love it.
I can really see
so I
how
love
passionate.
sitting in that chair as well, which is why I love
understand that.
interviewing people who have a story to tell.
Because you are also a journalist by heart.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. So here again, I'm a little intrigued because you've been in the writing space, and today you also help people market their books in different ways. So basically, you've been wearing different hats. So in the world that we are living today, where Instagram is taking over, OTT is taking over, and the attention span of people is coming down day by day. Today, you want to hook people with a video, you need to hook them literally in like 3 seconds, 5 seconds. Anything beyond that, no, you've lost the audience already. So how do you plug that in? If you have something to be communicated to the world and you really want the world to hear it, you really need to be able to hook them in, right? What do you do? How do you hook people into what you have to communicate to them?
Right. So I think Like one process is creation,
Yeah.
where you are, say, writing a book, correct? Now the other an entirely different process is you talking about your work or promoting it. So I see it as a completely different process,
Okay.
because I think it, like for me, I find it a very limited way of looking at things. When, say, an author who necessarily has not been, let's say, interacting with people in the community, or not building that space and voice for themselves, and they've written a book which is completely credible, because that's how any writer, they just want to write, essentially, right? And writers are mostly introverts,
A lot of them are, yes.
right? So then, when you talk about something like marketing, it is very, very hard to reduce it down to the fact that, okay, the book is out, and now within the next 3 to 4 months, we expect people to give the two most important things to us, which is time and money,
Time and money, yes.
right? So that is why I see marketing for books like it's like being in a relationship.
Okay.
Right? So if you and I did not have the series of conversations which we did, the camera would catch that, right? Similarly, if I feel that if you're not really also curating your life around the writing process, right? And you suddenly get out into the market one day and say, you know what, I've written this book, everyone should buy it, everyone should love it. And it will not happen.
It will not happen.
It can happen. I'm not ruling out the possibility. But I'm saying that, it's like building your brand or being out in the community, building that life. That is why they say it's a struggling process to be an artist, because you have to put that effort every single day. And you have to really, like when they say it's not just hustling in the very surface level of it, it's everything. I think your mind, your body, your relationships, every single thing has to come together. And that is when, the chain reaction happens, like I mentioned.
So I believe this is the same scenario or same case for all kind of art, right? Let it be writing, let it be dancing, let it be you are a singer. If you have to bring it out to people, you need to put yourselves in both the shoes, technically. Amazing. That is interesting. But then when it comes to your personal life, your personal experiences, because you have experience on both right now. You are a writer, you are a marketer. So when you're putting yourselves into both the shoes, how do you try and bridge that gap? Because I'm sure there are a lot of aspiring authors also watching the podcast today. So is there something that have helped you really, like you personally? Because when you have something that you have to communicate, you're bringing it out to the audience, you have the expertise of a marketer to know how to actually get it out there to the people. So how do you club it? A person, an author may not always have that opportunity, because like you said, a lot of writers are also introverts, because we know a lot of them. I'm not telling everybody, I cannot generalize, but a lot of them are. So how do you think we can actually, I wouldn't say give tips, but what are the things that have actually helped you that somebody listening to it can actually take some pointers out of it?
So I think, Naghma, this is honestly one of my favorite topics to talk about.
Lovely.
Because I believe it becomes very, very difficult sometimes to explain to a creative person or to an author or to a writer who spends so much time building their story, that when it comes to, marketing something, it can feel like a very disappointing process sometimes, because, you don't know who's on the other side. Right?
Very
and
true.
Suddenly you're expected to go around talking about your book, selling your book. But at the same time, personally how it has helped me is the fact that I've always looked at it from the perspective of being a learner.
Okay.
So I always try to extract what is in there for me to learn and for me to receive. Because tomorrow, I don't want to go to someone just with the idea of, you know what, this is what I do. Give me 1 hour of your time. Take me on your podcast. Because, there's people involved. I see it as an entire creative process. It's you sitting here right now. It's me. There is people who are helping us with the camera, with the audio. So I feel that it's very important to understand that there is only limited time that people can essentially give you. right?
Very
And there's
true.
also what kind of person you are. For example, if you are somebody like, for me, I love writing in long form. I may not do too well with microfiction or just writing, 2-3 lines, which is the format that may be, say, trending on Instagram Reels,
Yeah.
right? But then I think it's very important to identify that who you are and then curate your entire journey, right? Because if somebody is an introvert, you ask them tomorrow that, why don't you dance for Instagram? Because make dance in Reels, because that's what's trending.
Yeah.
It will not work for that
It will
person
definitely
at all.
not. Yeah.
And which I think also makes that I find the most exhausting process as well. Sometimes even to explain to friends who are in this process. But I think being in the publishing industry really helps you understand the publisher's perspective.
Ah,
So you don't get bitter. Like, you don't get bitter, and there is nothing in the world to be bitter about.
Very
like,
true.
if you get
It's all a learning at the end of the day. Whatever
Absolutely.
you experience, success or failure,
Yeah.
I truly believe that it will help you in your next step. I wouldn't say the next journey, but literally the next step.
right.
Interesting. I mean, that is, I hope you are able to plug all that experience into your day-to-day work life as well. So, Avnika, you also perform on stage. Firstly, hats off to you. I've seen your performance, amazing performance. It takes a lot of courage to actually stand in front of people and showcase your art to people. So, hats off to you on that piece. How do you come up with content? What is your thought process? How do topics inspire you? What kind of topics do you write about? Are there topics that you want to write but never really tried so far? So, how is your content building journey like?
So I think with performance art, it's something that I really love because it allows you to really embody, the entire enigma and the entire mysticism of the creative process, which is something that I really love. Also because, I cannot sing or dance or do any other form of performance art.
I am sure you're hiding some of those somewhere,
So-
but then yeah, not bringing that up today.
Yeah, because then, this becomes your primary means of performing and of embodying things which you create, bringing them to a stage, and also making people feel that through an experience.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that is something I really value. And in terms of content, so essentially, definitely has to be something I care about.
Okay.
That's for sure. Because I think unless it is something personal, something well thought out,
Okay.
it is just, run of the mill.
Yeah, I agree to that.
Right?
Yes.
And I also believe in putting in the work a lot.
Okay.
So if I'm writing a piece, let's say about, so I've written this piece about my journey with anxiety, which is a very personal piece to me.
Of course.
Now in that one, if I'm writing about anxiety, there are a lot of ways you can write about it.
Yes.
Correct? But then writing about it in a way that is relatable, and at the same time, it really helps you feel how a person who is feeling anxious on a day-to-day basis, how they actually feel. So my intent is to put out words that would make you feel that experience. Right?
Beautiful. Yeah.
And I think once I had this friend who was, which is the biggest compliment I could have ever hoped to receive, is that we were sitting, I was performing in a cafe, and he came up to me and said that, I have never had anxiety in my entire life, but while I was listening to you, I actually felt anxious.
Okay. Okay, a little very personal comment to make, but then yeah, I'm sure your content would have touched that person a lot for passing such a comment, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think art is not always meant to be comforting.
Yes.
Right? So for me, that is the process. But once I will write something, I will also pilot test it. I will go and perform in front of my friends. I will go and perform in front of my parents. I will ask for opinions. I will see what is landing well, what is not landing well. I will adjust my voice accordingly because I feel it's a lot of work, and I like to put that. Because sometimes, I think we've all gone through that experience once you get into the creative process that, I wrote this in 5 minutes and I'm going to be up on this stage, which is great. I respect it, you know, but my process is more personal because the more time I spend with the writing, I know the better equipped I am to embody what I've written and also to deliver it.
So one just follow-up question on this. So given that when you write a lot of things which are very personal to you, and which I agree completely, I'm somebody who believes that whatever you do has always, it should be something that you really believe in. Let it be your day-to-day job. Let it be the things that you do. Like if I don't like gardening, I shouldn't have a garden at home. I mean, it doesn't make sense, right?
True,
So that way, when you're writing, when you're building on content, when you're deep diving back into your personal journey, personal talk on a day-to-day basis, how does it impact you personally? How does it brings out the emotions in you? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? How has your experience and journey been like?
I think it's definitely a very intense experience to be this aware, because sometimes when you get into writing, like if you're building a story, you know, you will end up making notes about what people are saying. You will observe their dialogue, their body language. You will also observe your own self from a third person's perspective. So I think, you know, engaging in that level of thought, because usually we are not encouraged to think deep.
Exactly.
Right? Most of the jobs we do, if I'm making a presentation or I'm working on an Excel sheet, I can actually do 7 things at the same time. Correct? But if you're writing something and you're not even writing, you know, because writing is also when it comes out onto the paper. Before that, everything is happening in your mind.
Yes, agree.
Right? That is, I feel, the most draining process and the most the most transformational process which you go through, because at that time, you know, it's like you're solving a mystery. You're figuring out what the story is. You're figuring out, is there even something there to tell? Does it have any meat in it? How is this person in the story going to feel? Am I doing something wrong to them? You know, or if somebody is an addict, will they react like this to this situation? I may not know that, right? Because I may not have have access to the
that kind of an experience, basically.
Exactly. So, you know, there's a lot of challenges there which you navigate, because I also love fiction. And I think anything which you say, even if it's about a real topic or a real cause, it's possible to beautifully say that through fiction.
Lovely.
Right?
Oh, the way you're explaining now, I'm curious to know what kind of articles have you written? And because I know that you've written for multiple magazines also. What kind of magazines have you written for in the past? Are you still writing for magazines? And what are you currently writing? I'm very curious about that as well.
Okay, so I think number one is that I started my journey when I was about 18. And I started writing for Thought Catalog and for Berlin Art Parasites.
Wow.
And they were kind enough to take me on board as a full-time person, because they had a decentralized team. So there were, like, you know, couple of people in every country, and they allowed you to have that authentic voice. And so I think that's where it started, because when it comes to, you know, the digital medium, the world is vast and everybody can read what you're saying. Right? So I think I really got passionate about the topics of gender, identity, growth, and a lot of personal development, or even travel. For example, one of the stories I've written is about the Karni Mata temple.
I've heard about
which is a rat temple of India. And the intention behind that was to make people aware that, you know, there is a temple in India.
So you had traveled there, you were writing about your experience.
Absolutely. I traveled there and I walked in between, you know, I did the whole round of the temple. The rats were walking over me. I mean, so that's where, you know, you derive something very meaningful, and you want to you want to channelize it.
Very true.
So
that's unless and until you experience it, how can you be authentic enough, right?
Yeah, and at the same time, it may not be essential as well, right? Like I said, if I'm writing about somebody who's dealt with addiction, it is not necessary that I also need to have dealt with it. Which is what makes writing so powerful.
True. Very
right?
Intriguing.
because
Very
you can,
true.
it's like living so many lives together,
Yes.
you know, your own as well as the lives you may not have access to.
Very true.
So that is very, very, I think, important to me. But I also derive a lot of strength from, I think, being adaptable. So I started, you know, writing for Terribly Tiny Tales. Like I would send out my pieces to multiple platforms. Like the Scribble Stories was also, you know, coming up at that time.
Amazing.
Then I
Nice.
started another page which was inspired by Humans of Bombay, which was bringing out stories of, you know, underprivileged women or women who dealt with any kind of, you know, abuse or lack of privilege. So I think there have been these ongoing, you know, initiatives. Then with spoken word, there were, I think I did about 140, 160 shows.
Huge number.
All around India.
Nice.
So I think that also is, what do I say, like something that really helped me, you know, identify that this is important work, you know.
Of course.
Just because writing is not like changing a bulb or the job of a plumber or an accountant doesn't mean that it is not important work.
It is definitely transformational. I can definitely give into that. So currently you are working on a fiction.
Oh yeah. So basically currently what I try and do is that I think my only goal is that, you know, I do end up having a lot of ideas. But for me, the primary goal is to just make sure that I write every day and I think about writing every day. You know? So both of these are important processes. In terms of just like the next project or whatever, I may not have an answer for that because, like I said, I've started looking at it just as a day-by-day journey, as building one word at a time.
Yes. It is a good journey in itself.
Yeah.
Interesting. Good luck to that beautiful journey of yours. Now I'm very curious because we've talked a lot about performances, a lot of things that you did. I am sure that our listeners today would love to hear something from you, see you perform. Can you please do a piece for us today from any of your pieces that you've written before?
I can read out like 1 or 2 paragraphs for you.
Yes, please do that.
So I'm going to read out this piece which is on anxiety. On some days, my anxiety gently crawls into my bed and whispers, "Good morning," a warning bell for my fragile feet bargaining with the floor. But on some days, it sleeps with me. You see, it's no longer convinced to sleep under my bed. It keeps climbing till it's one with the voices in my head. On some days, I chase the spotlight, perfect my pauses, stick notes on my fingernails, rehearse my lines. But on other days, this anxiety, it's the flickering light bulb in the room. An unfriendly reminder of one, just one, sad face in the audience exactly 2 years ago. You see, my anxiety, it's the middle-aged neighbor with unpredictable working hours. He may sleep in on a Sunday or wake up with the sun whenever he wants. You know, this anxiety, it's the TV remote I carefully hide from my sibling 1,000,000 times. A foolproof affair, only to find it under my pillow covers while I was trying to conceal it better than before. And there is a lot more, but if you have to read the rest of the piece, please go to my Instagram bio and you will find this and a lot of my other works. And I really hope to know what you think about it and what you think about it as well.
Overwhelmed. That was strong. That's really strong, but beautifully written. I mean, amazing piece. I know I'm also curious. I really want to go back and read the rest of it. I as soon as I'm done with our recording, I'm definitely going to go do that. But this is really strong. So this is something you brought out from your personal experience also, right?
Yeah.
Well, that takes a lot of courage. Amazing work. I mean, that's really beautiful. So yeah, I do have I think we should definitely, the audience also, whoever is watching the show, please go check out Avnika Gupta's page on Instagram. She has a Linktree profile, the link in the bio, and all her work, everything is available there. You should definitely go check it out. And hats off to you, man. Seriously.
Thank you,
really,
Naghma.
really beautiful work. How would you want to I mean, this is a very cliche question that I always ask any writers for that matter. I would want to end our conversation also with that same piece. What would your advice, I wouldn't say advice, but then what would your pointer to be to any upcoming writer? What is it that you would want to tell them as a message, but not exactly about writing?
Oh, that seems like a tough one. So you want me to give them a message, but which is not
Which will
essentially
help, yeah, which will help them in their journey, but not a writing tip.
not a writing tip.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the most important thing would be just to identify that why is it that you want to write, and if there is anything in the world that allows you to achieve what you can through anything else, then do that. Don't write. You know, because how I came to this conclusion that I wanted to write
Yes.
is because I was like, there is nothing in the world which will give me what writing will. There is no other medium or no other job or no
Yes.
other line of thought that will give me what words will or what writing will. So I think that is the most important, because once you're very clear on that, all the other problems in the world about what I want to write about, will I be able to write, will people read what I write, will a publisher agree to publish my work, will an agent represent me, will I go international, all these, you know, the rest of the things can still be managed. But I think the first thing is to be like, why do you want to write?
Want to write,
Is it
find
a
your
strong enough
reason.
need in you, something you can't do without?
Yes.
And if yes, only then I think you should even take so much stress.
If
Otherwise,
it's not
just-
writing, if your
Yeah.
calling is something else, go ahead with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely, because there's no life and death in anything. Like, just do what
Definitely.
you want to do.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that beautiful thought. I think that's something really to mull over with. I think the first job I ever got hired to, and my company had a tagline: do what you love and love what you do. I still live by it, and I think that's exactly what helps in anybody to
Yeah.
pick up, do a job, do anything, try to build a career, try to build art.
Yeah.
If you're really enjoying what you're doing, if you know that's your call, that's your passion, go ahead and do it so that you may actually excel in it.
Yeah, and I think another tip which I really want to give people is that you don't need to have a book out or 10 books out
Yeah.
to call yourself a writer. No. You, every single day, you put in that work. You know, you can do it in any form you like.
Yes.
You know, so I think it's very important to claim it.
Yes.
And that is what really makes you powerful. That you assert your identity and you be very, very sure about it, because no one else in the world can come and be like, oh, today you're a writer or today we accept you. That's never going to
Yeah,
happen
very
in a
true.
creative journey.
Very true. Avnika, I wish you all the very best. I really pray, hope, believe that writing keeps giving you the power that I can see is giving you today. And I really wishing you all the best in all the endeavors, all the single individual words that you build one by one every single day. I'm wishing you all the very best for that. And thank you so much for being part of our Foster Talks conversation today. Thanks to Chai Point. Thanks to the IROC community for being our long-time associates. And thanks to you, ma'am. Thanks to
Thank you,
for the
Naghma.
wonderful
I
conversation.
absolutely enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you so much. So,
Thank you.
see you soon again.
See you.